The U.S. and Canadian lobster industry met in Moncton this week. An unexpected increase in the legal size of U.S. lobster has arrived like a rogue wave.
The increase was automatically triggered by surveys in the Gulf of Maine, showing a continued decline in the abundance of young lobster. The threshold came into effect less than a year ago and was unexpectedly exceeded in October.
We knew we were approaching the number, but we had no anticipation that we were going to trigger it when we approved it in May.
Giving lobster more time to mature and reproduce is behind the measure.
Little bit of gauge increase gives you a lot of egg production, and that's our insurance against future declines, we hope.
By 2027, the U.S. will increase the minimum size of the lobster's outer shell to 86 millimeters, 4 millimeters larger than the legal limit in place in much of Atlantic Canada. Smaller Canadian live lobster would be excluded.
We expect the states to link up with the federal government and have a unified minimum size, which will be enforced at the Maine border. So effectively, we will not be able to ship a certain sized lobster there that we always have been. So their action will create an action that we have to respond to in Canada.
A surprisingly large number of Canadian landings could be affected.
That proportion of stock that could fall within that relatively small 4 millimeter range could be as much as 10 to 30% of the actual landings in a given year.
For lobster buyers, the change represents new burdens. Lewisburg Seafood, where Alan McLean is a manager, buys £3.5 million a year.
Right at this present time, we buy a percentage of lobsters that we buy would not meet the legal requirement in the U.S. So depending on if we're shipping live into the U.S., those lobsters would have to be segregated, and we would have to find another market for those, and that may not be easy.
The last time the U.S. increased its legal size was 35 years ago, and there was an outcry.
The Americans are planning further restrictions on Canadian lobsters in 1991.
Canada filed and lost an unfair trade complaint under NAFTA and eventually increased the legal minimum to match the Americans. That decision has not been made in this case, but everyone is talking about it.
I'm not sure if we're going to have a choice because, like I said, we're dealing with a country that is our major trading partner. We might not like it, but they've got a big stick.
Tough questions ahead with no easy answers for Canada's most lucrative fishery. Paul Withers, CBC News, Moncton.